Good evening, good evening, good evening. We are live. Just let myself catch up. Welcome, as always, to Live and Undrugged. We are on Series 2, Episode 13 of this year. Tonight, I am speaking to Dr. Terrence Johnson, all the way from Tennessee. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Let's go back to the start of your journey. And
yeah. So for me, I've kind of redefined how I talk about what I do and kind of how I see the world. And so instead of me talking about my background for like a mental health and therapist and all that, I think a lot of people want to know, like you were talking about, the story. And so for me, I feel like I'm a big nature person. So I did my nature walk earlier today. I do about 4 or 5 miles, but I term myself as a life excavator. And what I mean by that is, people have life experiences, and what happens as you go through life kind of chips away at who you really are. And sometimes you start to hide certain parts, suppress certain things because people told you what you couldn't do, what you shouldn't do, what we do, this is what we do in our family and stuff like that. And sometimes the best parts of us have been so buried within us that we have to rediscover them. And so I think for me, that's the same way I've had to do. And it's a continuous thing where, life is a lot. Life, I used to say life is undefeated. Life would knock you down. But it's what you learn from those knockdowns, because you can't stay down. And I think those things help us move forward, and it's the lessons with that. So I don't say that I have all the answers. I'm not perfect, but I've been through a lot of things that people can relate to. And so I think that's, and we'll talk about it more as we go through it, but as far as like, father-son relationship, or relationship with people, like job, job loss. I've been fired from jobs. I've quit jobs, all that kind of stuff. All those things are everyday things people go through. Even growing up, I've had, water cut off, lights cut off, cars repo, all that kind of stuff, living with family members, all that kind of stuff. And so it's people see, where you are right now, and they don't realize, yeah, you go through a lot of the same things other people do. But it's how you define it, and then how you use it, not looking at it as a victim standpoint, but it's like, okay, this made me better. This made me more resilient. This made me have to learn how to do without. Some people, they don't know how to do without, a certain amount of money. But when you don't have those resources, okay, how you gonna survive? Okay, do you have to just warm up some hot dogs or something like that, or whatever? All of us had all the times, and I think that's what people need to hear more of. People can, I could talk about all kind of stuff about me and degrees and all that, but people don't really care about all that kind of stuff. They just care about the real life thing. And so that's what I try and bring to people, just real life, because that's where we live. We live in real life. We don't live in the fantasy world. We don't live in movies or whatever. We live a real life, and it's difficult. And I think the more people hear it from more and more people that might not look like them, might not live in the same area, but we still have similar experiences. And I think that's the biggest takeaway.
yeah. Tell me about life in Tennessee.
So that's the newer part. So I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. So I grew up in Mississippi. I grew up in Mississippi, but I was born in Louisiana. So I was kind of going going around the South in the last parts of my life. But how I got to Gallatin was I had quit my job July 2019. So I used to be a professor. I used to teach other therapists. I know when people like, you don't look like you. I used to teach. And so I just got tired of it. I got to the point where I had reached the ceiling. And for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I guess that's why I've been in school so much. But I I like to challenge myself and learn about different things. But I felt that I had gave all I could give to my students. And I got them to a certain point, and then I completed that assignment. And after that, I was like, okay, I still want to teach because I love to teach, but I didn't feel that my students were in a classroom anymore. I I didn't want to teach other therapists. I want to teach people how to be better versions of themselves and what they look like. And that might not be in the classroom, because in the classroom setting, and like I know I speak for teachers in higher ed or K through 12, whatever. It's it's a lot about grades. And so I don't want to teach just so somebody can get a grade and they say like, oh, I aced this test. I don't care about your grade. I want you to grow.
Mm.
And it really wasn't about that. After a while, just students just wanted a grade. They didn't want an A, and then they, about pass out if they got a B or C when I could have gave them an F.
Mm.
But I just wanted to, I wanted to be empowering, to people. And that's my overarching goal now. Is how do I empower people? I can help people by continually, counseling and all that, but that's not empowering a larger population of people. I'm limited on whoever I see one-on-one. But if I can create things, get on platforms like this or whatever, something I might say or talk about might help somebody. They're not coming in for therapy, but it's giving them something that they need, and it's practical. And I think a lot of times that's what stops a lot of people from therapy. So a lot of people, it's not that everybody needs therapy, but they need something. They might need, a skill or reference to something or whatever. And I think real life stories, that's why people like watching TV or binge watching Netflix or whatever, because something in that speaks to them. I know, like, a lot of my favorite shows and like went off there. Like I was a big This Is Us fan. I know a lot of people like I don't like This Is Us because it make people cry all the time. But I like This Is Us because I like the character of Randall. I saw a lot of me in Randall. And sometimes that's what people need. They need to be able to watch something or connect to something. They say, like, hey, this sounds like what I'm going through. Or hey, I see myself in that. Versus like, okay, this was wrong with you. Let's talk about the symptom. Let's talk about that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but people don't operate in that all the time. So they need other outlets to that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that there is a toxicity around people, around men, around the way that some women think about men and the way men think about men should be, especially with mental health. This is one of the reasons I do what I do, because talking about mental health and talking about these things that these vulnerabilities, these difficulties, these, no man wants to put himself out vulnerable.
Right.
This platform works because I've been able to get vulnerable with guests, and I've been able to sit there and I've laughed with them and I've cried with them, and we've broken the stigma of men talking about men, because it can be difficult. I've had my fair share of therapy in my life. I haven't always listened to it. It's not the easiest thing to listen to, is it? Because it's good for you, and I don't think you ever want to listen to what's good for you. But I think we need to get into a frame of mind where, like, women teaching women, men teaching men, not being sexist. I don't understand about other stuff. I have daughters. I have things that I really don't understand. So my wife deals with that. And I deal with the boys and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
you know, we need to be more open and honest about, you know, I struggle being a parent. You know, I always thought I was a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back at the way that my life was, the things that I did in my life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's my daughter saw so much me in so many different states that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good for her, and now that's led to her being of a certain mind. And I have a great relationship with her. I have a great relationship with all my kids, but um, the fact is, I don't think any father wants to admit they're not a great father.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I love my dad to bits. We, you know, at one time we had a great relationship, not so much anymore. I didn't speak to my parents for a long time, out of shame, out of guilt, out of, you know, other things, stubbornness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Over these past few years, I've been building a relationship with them. But that comes from the adoption thing for me. Um, Before we started, you mentioned about your relationship with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I grew up as an only child. So even though I have a sister, she's older, you know, we didn't grow up together. And I'm my mom's only child. So we have, you know, my sister, she has a different mom than I do. And so I grew up and it was a lot of like not just toxic, but it was a charged environment. Not the whole time, but my dad did some things. Probably started my teenage years that really started to like fracture our relationship. So like not coming home, and you know, and then it just kind of like he would be gone for sometimes weeks at a time. You know, sometimes like we'll see them and then they pop up and they're like going to church and like, oh, where you come from? You know what I'm saying? And just seeing how my mom reacted to that. And so I went through all those things, or like, you know, losing houses and bouncing around and all that. Like we did all of that. So it was one time when I was younger, I was in the Boy Scouts. So my dad was like the fishing instructor. And so we were real close then. Teenage, we weren't, and that's because he wasn't around a whole lot. And I developed a real strong hatred toward my dad, like a real hatred, and I carried that all through high school and into college. And I was like, man, you know how you have an internal feeling like, man, not that I'm wrong for feeling this way, but it's not benefiting me. Like me being mad and angry and all this kind of like, just, you know, when you have that difficulty with your dad, that kind of sense, it's almost like I'll put some hands to you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you feel, and you just walk around with it all the time. And I was like, man, I can't keep doing this. And I think me getting into like my career, it made me have to start facing a lot of that because I didn't start in mental health. I started as an architecture major.
Mm.
That's what I went to school for. I thought I was going to be a builder and stuff. And that didn't happen. So I was in there about a year. But going through all those courses and stuff, you really had to peel back a lot of that. And I remember I got to grad school, and one of the things, like one of the big fractures is I found out he was cheating on my mom. Uh, and I found out through somebody else. And I was like, man, this, man, it's just like your whole world crashed down. And not too long after that, and you know, I grew up in the church, so I'm really connected to that. My spiritual base is kind of like what sustained me over my life. And I was going to Bible class, and the preacher was talking about the different types of love, and he was talking about agape love and love in spite of. And I left the Bible class, and like God was like, "You need to call your dad." And I was like, "Nah, that ain't, nah, that ain't what you saying to me. Like, nah, I don't feel that." He's like, no, like so I'm driving back to my apartment, going back and forth with God, saying like, no, I don't know, this is not what you want me to do. And then finally, by the time I got to the apartment, I was like, okay. I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, I said, fix my mouth. Because I want to cut now. I'm gonna want to cut. I want to say some stuff, but I want him to hear what I got to say. And so we talked, and I told him, I said, hey, I just want to get some things off my chest. I want you to listen. Then after I get finished, then you could talk. And I just went through just how, I wasn't accusing him, but I was just saying like, hey, when this happened, this how I felt. When you said that, this how that made me feel. Or you remember this situation, I didn't like that. So it wasn't like oh, I was like going at him, but I was just saying like I was giving them instances like this is how it affected me, or this is how I felt about it. And I did that for about 30 minutes, and then I was like, okay, you can talk. And he was like, and I can't say that I agree with everything you said, or I feel the same way you feel about it. He's like, but I appreciate you came to me as a man, and and I see you as a man now. And I think I was about, might have been about 20, 22 then, I think 20, 22, 23 maybe. And that restarted our relationship. But I had to give the olive branch out because about a week before that, I had told my mom, like, I'm not talking to him ever again. Like, I'm through. I'm done. And but that shifted and changed a lot because fast forward, he would end up coming back to live with me in Jackson. And he ended up having an aneurysm in my house that I was remodeling. And the thing about where my house was, it was close to the hospital. So if he would have been anywhere else, he probably would have died then. But that conversation gave us about 10 years that we lost. And so he became my best friend. Like we would hang out, we would do stuff at the church, we would sing in the male choir together. And so it was a healing for us. But he knew I was I was at an age that if it was something that I didn't like or something he said, it like I didn't mind coming to him. And everybody couldn't come to him like that because my dad he's a real straightforward, real kind of just blunt person. And I think that's one thing he taught me indirectly is like, okay, if you come into somebody, you got to go ahead and state what you're going to state. Don't be, dancing around and whatever. Just say what you say, and mean it. And so he respected me for that, like in the same way I respected him. But it was that forgiveness piece that I had to do in order to get to that point. And a lot of, like you talking about it for men, and I worked with a lot of young men when I was doing college work. That's what their issues are. They got issues with their dad. And it's like you can see it on their face and how they act and how when people, say something to them and they respond, it's that I'm pissed off, I'm mad at my dad, but either he not here or we don't have a relationship or whatever. So whoever can get this, because I got it. I got a lot of it. And that would be my first question when they would come in. I say, hey, what's your relationship with your dad? Man, I ain't got it. I don't even talk. I'm like, that's a problem. Because I knew it for me. So I think for me, that's how I've been able to help people the way I have is because I've been willing to do that work myself before I came to, it's like once I did the work, the people I was supposed to help came to me. And that's kind of how it's been in my in my life. It's like, okay, I always feel like I got more stuff to work on, but it's not necessarily, you don't really work on yourself just for you. Just like with what you saying, if you didn't go through your challenges, you want to be at a point where you want to share other people's stories or do what you're doing or do the podcast. So it's all for a reason, but it's not necessarily us. We do it so then we could be better for the people that need us in the next season of our life.
Yeah. You see, I love my dad. He was always my hero.
Yeah.
And it's a bit painful now because he was always this. He wasn't like physically tall. He was quite short, but You know, he was always this strong man that I saw that did everything for everybody, a civil engineer, you know, worked on the railway tracks, you know, banging them and you know, he walked 30 miles a day doing this. He was my absolute hero. I loved, you know, people in our town, you know, he'd go and paint their houses after work for nothing, you know, so I could never live up to that. Now, on my 8th birthday, I was told that my mum and dad weren't my mum and dad by my mum. And it wasn't through choice. It was through, they had to tell me by law. Now, that set me off for my life. That was my first trauma that set me off into all these things and gave me mum issues and dad issues. And I kind of did a geographical, you know, I just went off to the other side of the country when I was old enough and didn't speak to them for years. Not out of hate, out of the fact that I couldn't bear what I'd done to them. I couldn't bear them seeing what I was doing to myself. You know, I didn't want them to go to my funeral, and I knew that if I carried on the way that I would carrying on, they would have been coming to my funeral. And no parent should ever have to bury their child. Right. You know, and so I made a conscious decision to just distance myself. And it's only in this past 8 years since I've started getting clean and sober and stuff, and that I've started to make amends. I actually started to make amends when I went to my biological mother's funeral. I had a relationship with her, and I had a relationship with my family. I found, you know, got brothers and sisters and that was great, you know. And I was always brought up that, you know, we'd be happy if you find your real parents now, you know. But that did put a strain on the relationship. So I stayed away. And that, you know, my mum and dad are you know, they're from the north. I'm from the north. It's different, you know. It's a very industrial place, hardworking, straight talking people, you know, probably like where you're from, straight talking people, blunt, you know, and they have a certain way of thinking. So my dad is like 82, 83. So the way that he thinks is, you know, you feed your family. A man doesn't cry. A man doesn't talk about his feelings. A man don't do, you know. And I think in the past few years, he's been able to sort of let go of some of that toxicity. You know, he has Parkinson's, bless him, and you know, Alzheimer's. But for the first time in a long time, on it was Father's Day a couple of weeks ago, and I got to speak to him on the phone. So I'm building that relationship with my dad. With my mum, it's a different thing. You know, my dad, I've always got on with. My mum, if anybody's got mummy issues, it's me. So, you know, that's the problem that I have. But I think many people don't know how to talk to their parents. I think many people feel distance from their parents because they're here and we're here. And we don't see each other as equals and stuff like that. And I think that's driven many a man into stepping back. You know, I don't, sort of culture-wise, you know, we're quite different. You know, is where you're from part of it's Bible Belt, isn't it?
Yeah. So Mississippi, Tennessee, that's Bible.
Yeah. Well, where I come from, it's, you know, there are a few churches, but it's like it's the Church of England or nothing. And many people are like, well, you know, you're God-fearing, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know, so where, you know, you talk about your faith, my faith means a great deal to me, but I've had to sort of fight to find mine.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't through choice either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've pretty much tried every sort of religion that's out there. You know, but I think that's why the reason that I had a problem with God, because I saw him as a spoiled kid with an ant farm and a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
That's how I saw God, you know, as a vengeful father. And I always knew he was like a father figure, which is why I sort of resisted for so long. And, you know, eight years ago yesterday, when I was sat in that crack house, you know, bowl, pipe in hand, and I prayed for freedom or death. And I said, God, Dad, if that's what you are, I don't even know if you exist, but if you do, then give me freedom or death. Take away this hurt, this pain, take away this hunger, this thirst for drugs, or take my life. And he put me to sleep. You know, I don't know if you know anything about amphetamines, but that's the last thing you want to do. But he put me to sleep. And I woke up a few minutes past 12 on the 27th today. And I haven't used a day since. He took away that want. But this past 8 years working with my church, or 7 years actually, really, because I knew he existed, but I resisted. And it was only on my deathbed when I met Jesus at the end of my bed in the end of March, April 2015, when I met Jesus at the end of my deathbed, that I said, all right, I take you into my life as father. Then I started learning about these, like you said, about these different types of love. And I didn't understand this. And then I started learning about adoption. So I always saw adoption as, you know, all right, I was loved by someone, but I wasn't loved by my real parents, which couldn't be further from the truth. You know, my mum spent years trying to look for me, but that's what I had. So when I was sat in church, I was getting resentful because you know, whoever was preaching would be standing up saying about, you know, you're adopted into God's family, and you know, started talking about adoption. I found myself getting really angry. Started talking about how Romans saw adoption and how Christians saw adoption. And, you know, the Roman view of adoption was you adopted, if you were Roman and you adopted somebody, they were above even your natural son. Yeah. So that's when I started to then build a relationship with Father God, and started realizing what a father should be. Because I've been a father myself, I've always sort of done what I thought I should do. And, you know, I haven't seriously met my kids or anything, but, you know, it's my lifestyle affected them. And I try to be a better, but not, I always wanted to be a good person. I just wanted to be a better person. I know when I gave my life to Christ that you know, that old me, you know, was dead. And when I was baptized, that old me, the remnants of that were gone, and a new creation was born. Now I know this, and, you know, it's all biblical, but trying to put that into practice, it made me stumble for so many years. In relationships, I you know, I'm not very good at gauging relationships. So everything I'm doing now, it's kind of in the dark. Well, not so much in the dark anymore. Things are getting lighter because I'm reading my Bible and I'm listening in church. But my faith does mean a great deal to me. And I think as men of faith, we have I don't know, I think we have a responsibility to kind of be the father figures within the church, the big brothers, you know, and I have father figures in church. Our lead elder is a great friend of mine, but I'm still learning. I'm 45 years old and I'm still learning about parenting. And that might seem weird to a lot of people that are watching and listening, but I'm a 45-year-old man that still is learning about family and about family units and about parenthood and how a dad should be and how a dad should act. And I think that's important to speak to people like yourself, because if we don't, how are we going to learn?
Yeah, I think at the core, a lot of what you were going back is there's a lot of things you said I want to go back to, but you all of was connecting, so I didn't want to interrupt. But one thing for me, and I always try and frame people this way: we're all human, and I always try and put people in context, and I always try and get people to see me in context, because I think if we know the why, then we'll understand the what. So what we do is always connected to what the environments that we grew up in. So we only act the way we know how to act until somebody teaches us, shows us something different. So that's one thing for me. Uh, it's continuous learning, because I don't fully know I'm still learning me, you know what I'm saying? And I'm 37, so I'm still learning myself. But I think, and with something you said earlier about, you want to be, you still becoming a better dad or whatever. And that's one thing that I embraced with my dad, was that he was he was doing the best he could with the thing. It might have been other situations he had going on that I didn't know about. We didn't talk about those things. So I can't just like, oh, well, you should have did this, you should have been that, and you should have been better than you was. Like, he was just doing the best he could. And it was things he did that were great. And it was some things that he did that weren't so great. But that's life. That's how all of us have been. We haven't had all good. It hasn't been all bad either. And so I think that's the balance that people need. But going with faith, for me, it's been I grew up in the church, so it's like I know all about. I've been in church all my life, but moving up to Tennessee, I haven't really got into a church, because one, I did a lot of serving in my church. And so like I pretty much I did everything but preach. Like I was a deacon, I was a trustee, I was a Sunday school teacher. I did all of this. So I did a lot of serving, and ministry is difficult. Uh, and people come to you, and just like people come to me in a therapy role, people come in a ministry role that come with certain things too. And so for me, for my own self-care, I was like, I gotta kind of take a break, because I was counseling people all the time. I'm teaching people, then I'm at church doing it, and meeting with people, and I was dealing with the youth. So, I had teenagers, so they had a lot of things, making sure I was getting with the parents and stuff. So I was like, sometimes you just absorb so much other people's stuff that you like, there's a lot. And for me, I lost, so at the beginning of 2021, I lost my pastor, and that's the pastor I grew up with. Like, even though we had a pastor before, pretty much that was the pastor that was from with me from when I was younger all the way through. And so he passed the COVID at the beginning of the year. And that was a shock.
Mm.
And when you in service in ministry, especially when you serve in your pastor, that's a different energy. You really under his leadership and under his guidance, and it's a lot of effort and energy put into that, because you honoring the person that God put over you as your shepherd. And so like when he passed, it's like, man, okay, well, what I do now? You know what I'm saying? That was a shock. It was just a shock.
Mm.
And then fast forward, in November, I lost my dad. So like 2021 was just it was a lot. And so for me, since I moved up to Tennessee, this has been the longest that I've been without being in a physical church.
Mm.
Even though I still do like online services, I watch. It's a few preachers that I watch frequently and stuff. I still do certain things, do my Bible study. But after my dad passed, it was like a recalibration, because it's like you were talking about, spiritual father and stuff. It's like, I guess it's losing a father, you kind of feel orphaned a little bit, where it's like, I don't have my dad anymore.
Mm.
Huh. You know what I'm saying? It's like, even if, whatever the relationship is or what, and like I said, ours was, we still had a real good relationship, but it was like, and I can't call him, you know what I'm saying? Or, our routine, it's a park that's here in Gallatin I used to go and drive to, because it had like a lake or something. People fish all the time. And that's why I would go call my dad. I would call him like once or twice a month. And I remember our last conversation, he was like, I was just telling about the people out. He like, you should get you a fish. You ain't got no fishing pole? I said, no, I ain't got a fishing pole yet. Like, you need to go fish. You know what I'm saying? It seems like it's nice out there or whatever. So like, I remember that conversation we had, the last one we had on the phone. And it's like, it really, I'm glad that I was at a point where we were good, that I didn't have any regrets when he passed. So I didn't have that kind of, like what if, but spiritually it put me at a point where, because a lot of my prayers was for him, because he still had some surgeries he had to, you know, that were in the works. And so that was my prayer. I pray for him, make sure he was healthy, all that kind of stuff. And so after he passed, I was like, well, what I pray about? And and it's still been a journey. And like you were talking about Father's Day. Father's Day was real rough for me. And but the benefit from him passing is me and my sister have reconnected. So we talk once a week. So we talk like every Sunday evening. And I think that's what's helped us get through it, because even though we didn't grow up together, we feel it the same. Even though we feel it from different parts, we feel it. And so it was like, it was nobody else I wanted to talk to but her, because nobody else will understand it. It's like, oh, it's Father's Day, like, oh, remember your dad out there, like, but it's a lot. It just, that weekend wore me out. It emotionally and everything, it just wore me out. But I try not to like shut it off. If I'm feeling something, I need to go ahead and feel it, because it's not gonna do me any good trying to suppress it down or act like I'm okay or whatever. Like I just told her, this weekend just ain't it. I'm gonna be all right. Don't try and lift me up or whatever. I just let me be where I'm at. Let me feel it. I'll be all right eventually. But I think that's been my message for people ever since he passed. Is like, if you got somebody that you really love and care about, and y'all got issues or whatever like that, don't let that stop you from like having that conversation or tell them that you love them or whatever, because you just don't never know what tomorrow brings. And so I'm glad that I had that piece where he knew how I felt, I knew how he felt, and so I didn't have that regret. But it still doesn't take away that pain or that void. And so now, I just try and use it as, you know, not just motivation, but like inspiration. Like, okay, my dad's not here now, I'm here still. So, you know, I'm his eyes, I'm his ears, I'm his, legs, because it was some of you that said earlier about parents, no matter what we try and do, we are our parents. Even if we don't want to be, we are them. And I think the more we can embrace the parts of them that are within us, we can embrace ourselves better. And I think that's the fight that we go through. Is like, I don't want to be like him. I don't want to be like you, but you are. You don't have to be the same version of that, but you are. And that's one thing I had to realize. Like, I am my dad. Like, we look very similar. We got a lot of the similar mannerism. We talk alike. He still had, some hair. I cut mine off. and it be one is thick as mine. But it's just certain things that you just have to build awareness to, like, hey, it's not all bad. So I need to embrace that. I need to embrace certain things about him. Um, and I do. So yeah, I just wanted to hit on. I don't know if I hit on all the points. It was a lot of stuff you had said. I wanted to go back. I don't know if I covered everything, but yeah, I wanted to touch back on some of those.
Yeah. I like what you said about the father relationship you had with your pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I have a relationship with our lead elder. We don't really have we don't call them pastors and things like that. It's elder is an elder and a preacher, but Grantley is a church planter and is known in this country very well for planting many churches. He planted our church. We started off in a school hall and we're now in a converted warehouse. And I love him to bits. But I wasn't always able to connect to him. And I remember when I was on my deathbed and he came in to pray for my soul. Because I'd convinced all the drugs that they had me on and all the guilt and shame over the years that had just packed into me. I was hallucinating, I was hearing things, and I was convinced that I'd caused the end of the world. And that God was angry with me, so he was ending the world, but he was making me watch it. And they were holding what's called a kangaroo court outside my hospital room. And they were because my hospital room was near the helipad. I was convinced that they were flying people in from my past to have a kangaroo court and decide what they were going to do with me before the world ended, whether they were going to torture me or whether, whatever. So that really messed with my head. And there were many people that came from the church to sort of visit me. And I know that, now that they were coming to pray with me and they were putting my picture up in the church every week and praying for me. And Grantley came in to pray for my soul because they were told they were going to lose me again. I'd already died once, so I'd got this chip on my shoulder that he hated me. So my back was up and I had this resentment against him, and I was verbally attacking people, and he just sat there and he told me he loved me. And now out of everybody within that church, me and him are the closest, because our church run this thing called the School of Supernatural Life, which is a course that teaches you that God is supernaturally natural and naturally supernatural, and that how we should have a relationship with him, and what our identity is. It teaches a lot about identity, and that's something that I didn't know. because I spent my life trying to be so many other people, pretending to be other people, pretending to be this, pretending to be that, taking on different things to my identity of violence, addiction, things like that. I didn't know what my real identity was. So in this past 8 years, I've really been learning about identity. I call myself a hooligan because I went from violence to vision doing this. I've now been doing it for 7 years. And it teaches us that we are the not only the children of a loving father, we are princes and princesses of heaven. So we would have this thing where we would crown each other. We'd make crowns and we'd crown each other, and we'd take on that biblical identity. So he's taught me a lot. And I'm such a different person to what I was. And it's only my relationship with him that I've been able to build a relationship with other men, because I've always struggled with relationships with other men. Women, that was fine,
Yeah.
To detriment, really. But with men, I always struggled. I didn't know whether to fight them or shake their hand. And I couldn't take verbal cues. So, I couldn't tell whether somebody was being sarcastic or not. So I would automatically go on the attack. So learning about family and learning about how healthy people, mentally healthy people and spiritually healthy people, and emotionally healthy people do it. Because I was none of those. I wasn't mentally healthy. I wasn't spiritually healthy. I wasn't physically healthy. I'm still not that physically healthy. I still have my problems. But the thing that I suppose that relationship, that father relationship, with leaders within the church, it's an important one. Mm-hmm. Because my dad, when I was a kid, he had this saying that if you shovel shit for long enough, you'll start smelling like it. Mm-hmm. And that's the people that we hang around with. Mm-hmm. And if you hang around with people that are being emotionally, mm-hmm. And it's not going to work, and you're going to start acting like them. So you need to be learning from positive role models, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And we were talking about, in church yesterday, some of the things that that you brought up about service. I serve hard in my church. Mm-hmm. I pretty much serve as many days as I can. Mm-hmm. I serve on the tech team, doing the video and the audio and the words and stuff like that. And I serve on the prayer ministry team, because I needed to learn to pray, because I didn't have a clue. So I joined the prayer ministry team to learn how to pray, and then by doing that, we're praying for other people. I served on the Alpha team, the Alpha course team, for 21 courses. That was a part of me. So I serve in a lot of parts of the church, and I suppose you can get resentful. But there's I think it's in Corinthians where it says, bring your whole offering to the storehouse. Mm-hmm. That's not just money. That's not just your 10%. That's not just talking about your tithe. Right. If the sad truth is, there are a handful of people within the church that are working their butts off. Yep. And there are other people that think that coming to church on a Sunday, or maybe going to a life group one night a week is spiritually healthy, is how you do it, or I don't give to church because I serve on a team, or I don't give because I give to charity. And it's not that's when there's a small amount of people pushing together, and it's breaking that family dynamic. A church is a family. Once I got out of the mind that church isn't a gallery for good people, it's a hospital for broken people. It's a triage for the traumatized. That's when I realized that, churches need to be family orientated, right. And we need to be working, we need to be praying with each other, we need to be ministering to each other. These things are important, but there are so many, it doesn't always work like that. And especially with COVID, how it was, I don't know how it was in America, but in this country, churches weren't allowed to open. So we had to set up a video team, and then people got comfortable just watching it on Sunday from their living room sofa in their dressing gowns and their cups of tea, and they got that comfort, and then they never came back. They got used to just watching it for convenience, and church isn't convenient. It's far from convenient, and I serve the community as well, but I mean, serving in the church, it teaches us things about resilience. It teaches us about responsibility. These things that I never really knew. I wasn't a responsible person. I could fake being a responsible person for an amount of time. I managed it for about 12 years. But when we're like that, we're not being true to ourselves. And if we're not being true to ourselves, we're not being true to God. When you said that, that you're not really in a church at the minute, that kind of saddened me, because I know what, I don't know what I'd do without my church. My wife just recently got out of hospital a couple of days ago. She was really, really ill, and she got taken in on Tuesday, and we nearly lost her. And literally within 5 minutes of me speaking to someone on the phone, I had one of the leaders on the phone saying, "What can we do?" And I don't think I would have been able to get through it had it not been for that. And just for that, and the prayer, and the not just the advice, but it really is in the Bible. Every problem we've got, it really is in the Bible, and they can point us to it. And I've really struggled with that. I wish I was an academic. I really do. I didn't learn to read and write till I was 21. I love to learn. Don't get me wrong. I'm dyslexic, but I love to learn. But I don't know. I think there are so many men like me that are stuck in that. How do you be a responsible parent? How do you teach your kids right from wrong if you're not living that?
Yeah, because I think one thing you were talking about as far as administrative too is their responsibility of it as well, and it's not just doing the service, but serving from the right spirit, because sometimes the service could be more look at me, or like title and role driven, and not for the service of it. And just like what you were saying, a lot of times you have a small group of people that do a lot of the main work, and then you have people that either, they show up, and everybody got their part in the church, but it's a small group that really do a whole lot. And I was always in the small group of doing a whole a whole lot. And I think for me, it took me out of the church as a place where I can go to, just like you saying, like for the broken people. Church became another job for me. And it got me to the point where like I almost resented it, not going to church, but having to do the service. Cause once I got there, I worked until I left. I wasn't hearing a sermon. I wasn't hearing the choir. I was just doing work. And so I think for me, the transition of like doing virtual for a while got me to a place where I could just get back to listening to sermons,
Yeah.
because I just be ripping and running during service. Now I do, and for me, it's kind of, that was an assignment too. I felt that had closed, and that's kind of why I could go, because I had been trying to leave for a long time, and God was like, no, no, not time yet. And so when he was like, okay, you can go now, um, I haven't really got that push to like go back physically. Even though I know when I go home, I do, it's that love, just like what you're saying. It's like I get out there and I feel it differently now because I can sit in the audience. Before I'll be doing devotion, taking up money, counting money, making the deposits, doing all. So it's like I'll be ripping and running so much that I didn't enjoy being in the building, because I was always doing something else where I was like, wasn't connected to the service. And I think for me now, it's like redefining it. So it almost got me back closer to God, because I could just focus on just that part. But I do know I want to eventually get back into it. But I know me, just like what you were saying, I serve wholeheartedly. And for me, I don't want to commit to something that I know I'm not gonna be able to do, because I will overly do. And I was just overly doing in too many areas, because I wasn't just doing that. I was over a scholarship fund that I had to plan events for every year. I was teaching Sunday school. I was a deacon. I was in the finance room. I, was, I had so many things I was doing. And so, like, my body was just literally tired. But sometimes with ministry is going even when you don't have the energy. It's like sometimes you'll be ministering, and before you, like, you be driving to church, like, I don't know how I'm gonna get through today. Lord, just give me some strength, what I'm saying? And it'll come, or you'll feel better after you get through, but it can be exhausting. And I think for me, that was the part. I didn't have a way to back away from certain things,
Mm.
because if you do it and you do it at a certain level, people like, you got it. Or when things come around, like, oh, that's what you can do. Oh yeah, you do that. You do it well. And you kind of get stuck in this loop. And it's like, I appreciate it, but I kind of need to back off, and nobody else wants to take it, because they're like, oh, well, you got it. You do it well. I don't want to mess it up because you got it. You got the whole thing. And I think for me, that was kind of like the limbo I was in, because it wasn't the fact that like, oh, I didn't want to be in church, but I was like, I just don't want church to become a job for me. And I know that's a way that you can burn out, just like you burn out on your job. You can burn out in ministry, because either you take on too much, or you put yourself in a situation where you volunteer for too much, and then you can't back out of the stuff that you volunteer for. so so I think that's part of it. But then when you was talking about as far as like serving with your pastor and stuff, I think that's a certain, because for me, one of the greatest memories I had when I got my doctorate, my pastor came to my graduation. And he had just got off the road. I think he had preached somewhere out of town. And I wasn't even expecting him to come. Not that he didn't want to, I just knew, I think he had just really just made it in town. And I remember I was sitting down and I looked up and I saw him come in the door. I'm like, oh, they go Pastor. I'm like, Pastor came to my great, and it just meant so much to me because I know, especially as you get closer and closer to your pastor and you serve with your pastor, you see a lot of the stuff that other people don't see and what they had to deal with. People come to them, what people ask them for and all that. And so it's like, I wasn't necessarily expecting him to come, but he came on his own. But there's so many other people that he's doing those type of things for too, that it weighs on him. So even if that meant a lot for me, that's still energy that he spent coming to that he could have just went home and went to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And so those things I think people don't understand about their pastors too, is that we get so accustomed to them being around for us that we don't really understand the effort and energy it takes for them to be present for our events, praying for us, going around doing things. And so I think for me, that's why I always appreciated him. And he always knew, if he needed me to do something, I would do it because I just knew the sacrifice he was making. So if I could do something to kind of alleviate some stuff off him, I tried to do that. And so yeah, it's a being a pastor is a whole different role. It's a whole nother level of responsibility and commitment and sacrifice and leadership and everything else. And so I know a lot of pastors. I have a lot of pastors that are my mentors as well, and we had some real good conversations, but just about life and stuff. But um, one of them, the name is Dr. Bruce, and we got connected through somebody else I met, like a men's prayer group, and I just talked to him about a week ago. He just lost his wife, and him and his wife were real close. They did ministry together. They went singing and all that, and I would go, go to lunch with them and stuff. They used to come to our office and all that. And he when you were talking about, like the courses and kind of learning, he had a he wrote a book called Spiritual Formation, and it really, really helped me get deeper into the word because it was practical. So it's like it kind of taught you how to like read a verse, but you kind of create a prayer from it, pray from that verse, through the prayer. So, you can apply it to your life. And, so it made me see the Bible in a different way. But also when you talk about, as far as men talking, like me and my business partner, and we've been knowing each other for years too. We A lot of the stuff we try and help people with a conversation we've had about like life and family and just being a man or trying to be better or like our own insecurities and stuff. And we had to learn how to do that because you got to put a language to that. And I think that's the difference between like men and women. We don't really have a language to what we feel. We feel too, but we don't. Most of the time, all we know, like either I'm angry or that we can be angry. We cool with that. We might be a little, we'll say we tired, but that might be us being depressed a lot of times. But we have a different language, so we don't have like all these different words for our emotions. So sometimes we have to be practical in the way we frame it, so we can get it. And I think even in college, my best friend, we had something we call roommate discussion. So we would come in and like one of us had a day or something like, hey, you all right? You need a roommate. We need to have a roommate discussion. That was our way of kind of like talking. And so sometimes you had to frame it in a different way because it's not like, oh, so how do you feeling bad? We're not gonna talk about stuff that way. But you're like, man, there's a lot going on. Like, oh, okay, well, what's going on? So we might say that, and might talk about stuff that way. But yeah, I'm just trying to. You said you say a lot of stuff I want to hit on. So when I when I get back to it, I try and go back to the different points and stuff. So I might have missed some or whatever like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I do like to I'm just getting used to this communication thing, you see, because for me, trauma and addiction is disconnection. It's disconnection from yourself. It's disconnection from your family. It's disconnection from God. And I spent a lifetime unplugged from that. So the opposite of addiction is connection. And, you know, the opposite of trauma is connection. It's reconnecting those relationships with God, with family, with, you know, with friends. And it's not always easy, is it? And I'm not a natural speaker. You know, I love to write, and I write the way that I think, and that comes across as quite poetic and prosaic. But the way that I speak, you know, my voice, my accent isn't a natural speaking accent. It's not a natural accent of somebody that's going to minister to people. But I needed to prove to myself, and I needed to prove to other people that if I can find emotional, spiritual depth, and I came from a violent life, you know, sleeping around and fighting for money and underneath pubs in cellars and car parks, and, you know, that mentally ill man that tried to punch through a solid oak door, if he can find that emotional, spiritual, and physical depth, then so can anybody else. I believe that once we've been through a certain thing in life, it's our responsibility to teach. I say this over and over and over again when I do these, because it's important. You know, it's important that we keep an open mind, we keep an open heart, and we speak through our problems. You know, like I say, I'm still learning, and I've done this, and I've laughed with people, and I've cried with people. You know, I've interviewed bank robbers, convicted terrorists, convicted killers and murderers. I've spoken to human traffickers, drug traffickers, you know, people that have done some really serious, dodgy things, and they've found peace and a new life through the love of God. And I know people switch off when I say this, and I know people switch off when I mention the G word. And I talk about things that other people won't talk about, the taboo things, because, you know, and I know people, it makes people feel uncomfortable. Good, because we need to feel uncomfortable at times. Because how are we going to learn? If I don't tell you what I've been through, or if you don't tell me what you've been through, how am I going to learn about you? How are you going to learn about me? How am I going to learn about everybody else? How am I going to make these connections? How are people going to connect to me? How am I going to stand up on the stage at our church and talk about what's happened in my week? We talk about good news stories at the School of Supernatural, what we've done, who we've spoken to, you know, these miraculous things that have happened. How do we learn these if people don't learn them and then teach them to other people? You know what I mean? And it's like, I love education. Like I say, I'm not academically minded. I find it a struggle, but I do learn. I'm doing journalism at the minute because I don't just want to be the accidental journalist. I want to actually be a journalist. But God is leading me into a life that I'm not massively comfortable with. I can write it. I can write it. And, buy a book, that's fine. I'll give it away. But doing this, he's leading me into ministry through this. He's leading me into ministry through my church, through the prayer ministry team, through, and because I got up, I was told the other day that I'd actually led someone to Christ through something that I said, sharing my story, sharing about, when I was in the hospital and I met Jesus. Me sharing that on stage led somebody who walked in through the door to listen and put their hand up and say, I want Christ. How are we going to make disciples if we don't make disciples? It's about disciples making disciples, and that's what we're learning at the minute. And doing this and talking, and I speak to people that don't believe in God. I have a lot of people that sit there and watch me week after week and listen week after week, and they're like, "Yeah, we love you, Jack. You could talk a bit less about God, but we love what you do." But God is a massive part of my journey. I've spoke to people that are Buddhists that's been a massive part of their journey. And I'm like, well, that's great. I know this man called Jesus, you could talk to him, but it's like, how do we, a lot of people are hard to reach, especially those toxic men, those men that are like, rah, I'm a man, they might talk a little bit about the mental health and think that's them being vulnerable, but we need to bring it into culture that we speak openly and honestly, because people say, how do you feel? And you go, yeah, I'm all right. Are you? Really? And I think we do need to be more and say, not feeling it today.
Yeah.
Even if it's just that. That's emotional growth. Even if it's just that, not feeling it today. Don't really want to talk about it. I want to go and watch Netflix. That's fine. At least you've then made yourself open and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we do that? How do people do that? Even if they don't want to connect into the God bit.
Yeah.
How do men? I know how I would do it, but you as a professional, yeah. I'd like to know how you would advise to do it.
So for me, I'm always about awareness, and not in the sense that people think of it. I'm always looking at where am I right now and what's going on with me right now, and where are some things not balanced, because the area that I'm not balanced in, that's the area of growth or work. And if I don't know those, then I'm just going and trying to do stuff all just on my own, or just doing just stuff at random. But if I'm aware of certain things, then because and I think this usually as men, our journey to God, it's almost like it's not like I just choose. It's like we get to a point where it's like you understand why you need God. Because for us is, well, I gotta create this life myself. I gotta frame, who I am as a man. So I get my vision, I go forward with it. And to really walk with God is like, all right, I got stuff I want to do, but God gonna get the ultimate say so, and he gonna tell me what I need to do. And so they go back to like that father hierarchy stuff too. God always the father. And just like with a father-son relationship, you might not like what your father had to say all the time. You're not gonna like it. And some of the stuff he asks you to do, like, I can't do that. But it's when you realize that, God put certain things in you, he wouldn't ask if he didn't put it there. So a lot of the times is that we try and deny the stuff that he already put in us because it doesn't make logical sense or it doesn't make sense to other people. But following God is always gonna make people question you. Like me quitting my job. I knew why I needed to quit my job. I knew why why I needed to move, but it looked real random to people. But these are all things God kind of put like, okay, go, all right, go it out. And it's not that you have to necessarily defend certain things, but when God pushes you in a certain way or in an area, it's not going to be where you want to go. And it's not going to be in the timing that you want it to be. It's going to feel all the way out of whack in your timeline. Because you got your 5 years planned out, and God like, I want you to move here. And like, but God, I just bought a house. I just got this car. I just, we just settled in. Look, we just got everybody settled. We got the school. I want you to go here. It's like, for real? And then sometimes you're like, okay, but maybe that was just me. That one guy talking to me. And then he come back around. Or you go ahead and do the thing you wanted to do, and then it don't work. Or it get you off track for a minute, and then you come right back around to the thing he told you to do a couple of years ago. Like, okay, I'm just gonna stop trying to fight. So for me, one thing I've learned is not try and fight God. Mm-hmm. And for the longest, that's the biggest issue I had. Because God will tell me to do something, and it's like, but God, I can't do that right now. I hear you, but that don't. I'm trying to do something else, Lord. I got some stuff I want to do, and this is what I want you to do. Ooh, okay. Because when God asks you to do something, it's always gonna be a sacrifice in it. Mm. Either people, time, place, something getting cut off. Mm-hmm. And you got to be willing to do that. Because that's if you making moves where you still attached to a lot of stuff, then God not gonna allow you to go further, because he's like, if you take all this stuff, you're not gonna make it. I'm trying to get this stuff off you. I'm trying to prune it. These people that you got around you, you think they're good. No, they not gonna go where I'm trying to send you. You got to start pruning things off. And then if you don't, he'll put you in a situation where you'll get to where you need to get to. The people that you're around, you get removed from, they fall off. It just happens. And so I think that's the thing, that in order to really follow God, you really got to be willing to allow him to disrupt your life, because that's what he's gonna do. Like, following God is gonna be a disruption. If something hadn't been disrupted, then you're not following God, because it's gonna feel like you literally getting attacked. Like, what? Wow, where did all this stuff, like, you used to have a big circle around you, and now nobody's around you. Mm. You used to, be able to go hang out and stuff, and then that don't feel right anymore. Like, man, you won't let me do nothing that I want to do. Like, man, what is it? And that's what people. So, and it was fun. We did a Facebook Live about 2 years ago. It was like me, my business partner, my best friend, and then this guy from London. Actually, I was doing a podcast with. We were doing like a Christian podcast. And the name of it was "Be Careful What You Pray For." Mm. And that's what we do. We pray like, Lord, okay, use me, Lord. Oh, okay. You prayed that now. So then when he try and use you, it's not gonna be the way you want it to be. No. He gonna push you into something that you don't like. Okay, all right, you said use me, all right. and go out there and speak to the homeless. Like, but okay, Lord, but I don't. That's not how I want it to be. You know, no, you said use me, right? You said that. Oh, that's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
Man, you know. So I think for me, that's the uncomfortable part of it. But he wouldn't keep sending it to you if he didn't put something in you. And a lot of it is it's not even like skills or whatever, it's experiences. So just like for you, even though it might be things that you regret and things that you like, man, I wish I would have did that. It all creates a story and a narrative that make you relatable to people because they're like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, I did that. And so that's the same thing. It's, even our failures are not necessarily barriers. We just gotta frame it because it's gonna help somebody. It's for somebody. And so a lot of the stuff I talk about now is just me going through and navigating through life. Like me talking about me and my dad. Like I've literally been talking about that the last few years, but especially after he passed. But I know it's for somebody. That's somebody's story. Like somebody got that issue and hearing me talk about it, like, oh man, like I might need to call my dad. Like if somebody, listening, if that's what they got from me, that's what I wanted because I want them to have something that I say that it prompts them to make an action. Because if I'm to get on there, like I say, it's a lot of stuff I could have talked about and like, oh, I did this and I did that and all that kind of stuff. What have I been through that can connect with you that might prompt you to do something? And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not honoring the time that I've been given to just talk about myself because that's not gonna resonate. I mean, people are like, oh, that's good, that's fine, but people want to know those pieces, and I think that's why it was easy for me to like be there in the hospital with my dad and like literally like his day-to-day care, a lot of that I was doing. So like medication stuff, all that, you know, PT type stuff, getting them up and all that kind of stuff, getting them around, taking them get a haircut, all that I did. But that's, go back to that agape love, that's in spite of. So in spite of what the past stuff may have been, I'm honoring this right now. I'm honoring you as my dad. So I'm gonna do this. And it was actually a conversation we had out there on the porch one day. And we were just sitting out there. He just looked at me, so why you treat me the way you do? I said, what you mean? He's like, no, like, why you just, you treat me good. Like basically what he was saying, like, you don't have to do this, what you doing. I said, because you my dad and I love you. That's what I told him. And I think people, they don't get to that point with like, even in spite of what I might not have liked about things that you've done, I'm still gonna honor you. And so just like with that, honor your father, your mother, that's one thing. If people know anything about me, I did that. I did it for my dad. I still do that for my mom. I really take that seriously. And they know that like, yeah, you make sure your parents are taken care of. And not from a financial standpoint, but I honor them. And I've always been that way. And I think that's what people, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the same relationship, but it's that honor because they're still your parents. You only get one set of parents. That's it. And so you need to honor them. And that's how you become blessed. Not overlooking or saying like, oh well, you didn't do things I didn't agree with. It's not saying that. It's the honor part. You don't gotta cuss them out. You don't have to do all that kind of stuff or whatever like that. Just honor them because that's all you got. You just got one mom, one dad. Now I just got a mom. I don't have a dad now. But I made sure while he was here, I honored him. And he knew I did that. And so I don't have that kind of regrets like, man, I wish I would have ooh, I remember I said this to him and I shouldn't have said that or whatever like that. Anything I said, it wasn't to attack him, is always my perspective. Always. And I never did cut. Even though I wanted to a lot of times. What was the last time I wanted to? But I did. I stuck to it. but yeah, I think that's the main thing. So I think for me is, what are you willing to sacrifice? And that's just for your own improvement or for your spiritual relationship with God, because it's gonna require, like, any improvement you do in yourself is gonna be a sacrifice. Me, school, all that, I sacrificed a lot because I was in a doc program full time. I was adjunct teaching. I was still counseling full time, 5 days a week. I was serving at church as a youth leader every Saturday and Sunday. So 7 days a week, I was doing something for 3 years straight. 3 years straight. Sacrifice to get to the point where I could teach full time, like all that. But and they were still going in and out the hospital, so life was still happening. It was a continuous sacrifice to get to that point. And to every level, everything you want to move up to, is always, you're gonna have to surrender or sacrifice something, because you can't make it to the next level with your hands full of stuff. You have to have your hands open. If you have your hands open, you can receive what the next thing is. But if you hold on to this, you hold on to that, and all that kind of stuff, where the blessing's gonna come? They can't. They don't have room. And so that's the thing is, I think that's the one thing, like, whatever you want to do, it's like, okay, it's just like the scripture say, count up the cost. That's the count up the cost. The count up the cost, not necessarily financial. The count up the cost is, what are you willing to let go of to follow? And that's the continuous walk. Is what are you willing to let go of and sacrifice?
Yeah. It's like, I think it always surprises people when they pray for something and then they get it, but they get it tenfold. And God's, they're like, okay, I asked for this, I wanted it, but did you have to give me so much? Because this is manna from heaven. I am sending you blessings. And that's what we get when we ask for blessings, and then when God asks us to do something, we're like, really? Because I don't feel comfortable with this. This is like hard. And it's like, well, I never said it was easy. When I became a Christian, I had people accuse me of taking the easy way out. It ain't easy. This is a hard life. Living it right, it's a hard life. And when we stand in church and God gives us a blessing, and we're like, he'll ask us to do something, bring a verse or bring a prophecy or whatever, and then we're like, and then somebody else brings that same thing that you've got. They've got the blessing. He asked you, but somebody else did it, and he asked them as well. And we lose out on so much. Never love. I want to make that clear to people. We never lose out on love from God. It's like a father asking a child to do something, not telling them, but asking them, can you do this? I drink a lot of coffee. It's pretty much my only vice now. I stopped smoking, stopped vaping, everything like that. I drink a lot of coffee, but most of my kids are now old enough to make them. So I'll ask one of them and they go, do I have to?
Yeah.
So I'll get the other one to do it. And then maybe
Yeah.
chuck them 50p just to, show, the responsibilities of, we've got animals, we've got rabbits, we've got guinea pigs, feed them and change their hutch and water them. And, they don't want to do it. Oh, can they do it? And blah, blah, blah. But they don't realize that it's blessings. These are the things that we do that we remember when we're older. These are the things that we do that make us smile. Oh, do you remember when, we used to, we used to sort the rabbits out and, the animals out outside, and we did this together as a family. Or do you remember that time? These are all blessings. And I think that we feel sometimes that even when it doesn't feel like a blessing, people often call it a curse, but it's still a blessing. But God, like you said, God is asking us to give up something. Time, money, time I've got a little bit of, and I give what I have freely. We don't have a lot of money as a family. We live on faith. But God provides. He always has done. I walk a lot. I mean, I often do 7 mile a day. Even when I was a homeless addict, I was doing 14 mile a day just to have a relationship with my daughter. Walking is not something that I'm, is something that I'm extremely comfortable with. But walking that much, I go through a lot of shoes. I can, and I mean, earlier, I think late last year, my last pair of shoes were on their last leg. The soles were coming off. I was walking down the road and they were flapping like clown feet. And it was a Sunday morning, and I got to church, and one of the youth leaders walked up to me with a bag in her hand, and she went, my son was getting rid of, my son's cleaning his closet out and he's getting rid of some of his shoes, some of his trainers. I think they might fit you. And there's like 3 or 4 pairs of shoes and 3 or 4 pairs of trainers. A couple fit me. I didn't even have to pay for it. I didn't even tell anybody that they were, that I was using super glue to keep them together, to stop them falling apart. God then did this. For my birthday last year, I went down to my church on the morning to help out to do some things, and one of the leaders just came from downstairs and said, Jack, he said, I like to be obedient to God, and we as a family, we live on faith, and we don't have a lot of money, but God told me to give you some money, and I asked him how much, and he gave me a figure, and I've put it in this envelope, and this is for you. And that morning, my wife and I had discussed that, when it's birthdays, we like to have just a meal together. Yeah. Like a takeaway meal, like a Chinese or something. And, having so many kids, it gets a bit expensive. And he said, God gave me this number, I've put it in there. And he said, literally, when I did that, he came back to me and he said, when I did that and I gave it to you, somebody else gave me that exact amount of money in my pocket. He said, so I blessed you, and in return, I was blessed. And it's like, it's such a blessing to be able to bless people. And, I think so many people think that it's a chore to serve. It's a chore to bless people, but it's a blessing. It's not always easy, and it's not always a blessing that we want.
Right.
Is it? It's not always a blessing that we want. Sometimes it takes us out of our comfort zone. Me starting this took me out of my comfort zone because I was talking to a mate who's an internationally acclaimed hostage negotiator, and he went, "Why don't you start a podcast?" I'm like, "Can't write a blog." And he's like, "No, you start a podcast. You need to learn to speak." You know, but that was God putting His hand on it. So many things have happened in church, you know, that have just been so supernatural and natural and naturally supernatural. There's a great saying that I like. There's when I pray, coincidences happen. When I don't, they don't. And I think we have to live that way. And I like living that way. It's fun.
Yeah.
Not always. Not knowing where the next check's coming from, but it's fun. And it's a good way to live, and it teaches you humility, which is something that I never had before. To be humble, to be truly humble in front of God. You know, I was given an envelope on Sunday by a dear friend. You know, and that had money, and that made me cry.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't expecting it. And he's like, "Well, you blessed us because you know you did the DJing for our wedding anniversary at the church for 2 hours on on the Saturday before." And it's like, "Well, yeah, well, 2 hours. This is a lot more than 2 hours." And it's like, I asked God for a figure. He gave me the figure. I put that figure into an envelope. I was being obedient. And obedience is the thing that we have to learn, that we don't always want to be obedient, especially to dad. You know, it's like, well, I'm your dad.
Right.
What do we say when we say the Lord's Prayer? Our Father in heaven. And it's like, I feel like the naughty kid often, and that rebellious kid often. And I'm sometimes like, because he really pushes me. And life hasn't been easy for the past, I suppose, 2 or 3 months. We've had a lot of family tragedy and a lot of family horror and just so many traumas and difficulties through this past few months. And God's been there all the way through it, even though that we don't always see it. God's been there at every point. And there's so many people that will go, "How dare you?"
Yeah. Yes.
Why are you doing this to me? Haven't I been good enough? Didn't I do this for you? Didn't I do this for you? And it's like, he's like, what? I'm your dad. I'm not telling you this thing for you to go do it willy-nilly and because I just want you to do it to prove that you love me. I'm telling you to do these things that take you out of your comfort zone to build you, to make you a better person, to make you a better father, to make you a better brother, to make you better in your community. You serve in your church, you serve in your community, you're gifting people, you're getting blessings. It's a blessing to bless. And there are so many people that are like, I can't be bothered with that. I'll just change church. They don't ask me for nothing. Right. And it's just, you get caught in that constant cycle, don't you? I like to listen to God. I don't always like what he's got to say because it's not always easy, because sometimes that father has to be stern for the good of you. And I'm not saying personal tragedy is God being stern, but sometimes we need to learn more. There's lessons to be learned about family and about how family dynamics work and about, perhaps you're not being the best that you can in the family, perhaps that you're not doing as you should be, or perhaps you're just not listening to what God has to say. And I fight it a lot. I do fight it a lot. But I guess it's kind of in the genes, to be opposed to that sort of fatherly thing, because we hate when we're wrong. We hate when, when we're being told off. Sometimes we're told off gently. And I think that we just, churches, communities used to be built around churches. Now churches are built in communities, and I think we need to go back to that, communities built around churches and that family. Because if we don't, I think it's going to get a lot more difficult. Pandemic or not, things are not the same as they were a few years ago. It's difficult, and I have people saying to me, oh, we're in the end of times, and I have other people saying, well, we don't know when the end of times is. All we know is that we're in, but this is what we need to do. And it gets so confusing, especially for Christians. And we need to be together, and we need to be helping each other, and we need to love. I like what you say about that agape love. That's something that I had to learn. Forgiveness for me is a big one. Unforgiveness, especially with myself, and guilt and shame and stuff like that. But not forgiving those that abused me and trafficked me around, sexually trafficked me as a child around the UK special school system, to everybody that ever hurt my feelings or my body, to all those that ever physically took a fist to me. I hated everybody. In 2017, my sister's boyfriend beat his 2-day-old daughter to death because she wouldn't sleep. And I hated him with a vengeance. And I thought that it was a righteous hate, that a righteous man could hate him. And then he was murdered in his prison cell about 9 months later by his cellmate. Not over what he did, over a £20 drug debt. And then we were robbed of answers, and took about a year for the funeral. And one of the lead elders took me to the funeral at the opposite end of the country, back in the north. I live in the east of England. And we were sat in the crematorium, and we, went for the funeral, and that was all right. And I was keeping myself. And I went outside and I lit a cigarette, and I turned around, and his mum put her arms around me and squeezed me and said, "Thank you for coming in," and walked away. And I hated her with a vengeance for that son that she brought into this world. And I froze. And then I knew that minute I had to forgive her. I had to forgive him. Not because that takes anything away from what he did. And I knew that I had to love him and love my enemies, because love doesn't mean like, love doesn't mean agree with what they're about. It means love, and forgiveness means not letting them take space in your heart, in your soul, and in your mind. because that is damaging. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And that tore me apart. And I remember sitting in Chris's car and just bursting into tears. You know, and he's a very stoic man, so he didn't know what to do. But, you know, and I said, I've got to forgive him. And that's been a journey in itself. And, you know, I've had people tell me, you know, why? And occasionally the news stories will come up. You know, I'm a admin on many crime groups and prison groups and former prisoners and stuff like that. And occasionally the, you know, the UK press will come up about it and somebody will bring it back, you know, about the, you know, the fact that he was murdered, and they would say, oh, well, it's karma and he's got what he deserved and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no. He deserved to spend the rest of his life in prison, which technically he did, but he deserved to live out his life. He was 21 years old, 22 years old, I think, when he went in there. He got life with a minimum of 10 years, so he could have been out at 33. We'd have fought to keep him in. But that was taken away from us. The answers were taken away from us. So then I hated this guy, John Westland, that took his life. And then he was getting on my mind, and I was getting angry at little things. And that's not what God wants. He doesn't want us like that. He wants, you know, he doesn't tell us to forgive and to love for the benefit of other people. He tells us to forgive and to love for the benefit of ourselves, for the benefit of the blessings that we can bring to other people. There's so much hate out there, you know, and violence, and we don't need it to be adding to it. You know, there's the stuff that you've got going on in America at the minute, and the school shooting in Texas, and you know, the thing that surprised me was that the woman that I spoke to from Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, she said that, you know, she had cancer and she went to a doctor, and a doctor prayed with her. I couldn't believe that's alien to me. Our doctors get fired for offering to do that. That's illegal here. Wow. You can't even show what you can wear a cross. You can't show it. And that really, really surprised me. That was alien to me. The fact that doctors praying with patients. We have a lot of doctors in our church and surgeons and stuff like that, and it's great. And they were, you know, they pray that they could pray with people. But I suppose for you that would be normal, but for us that's abnormal, and that's something that we need to be looking at bringing it into. You know, I understand about multicultural stuff, but we need to be bringing God back into the equation, because we've got in so much trouble without him in the equation. What harm's it going to do bringing him back? That's why I say to the people that say, what's God ever done for me? You know, well, that job that you've got, that nice car that you drive, you know, it's all come from somewhere. It's all, you know, it's all blessings. It just saddens me that if I could, I would bring God to everybody. It's not always possible, and I can't, but through this we can talk about it, you know. I guess I'm kind of jealous that your doctors can do that, you know. When I've been given diagnosis and I've been sat there crying my eyes out, you know, when I got told I had cancer 3 times, I wished that doctor could have prayed with me. When I went into remission, I wished that doctor could have praised with me. When my wife went into remission. I wished that the doctor could have done that with her. And you know, I know a few Christian doctors that like to try and push the boundaries a little bit. But something needs to change. We need reforming our health service, reforming our prison service, in everything, and especially our education service. You were saying earlier about grades and stuff like that. My son is he's dyslexic, and he's just finished his GCSEs, his exams. He's 16. He goes off to college in September, community college, and or your equivalent to community college. And we're so proud of him because he's not the most academic of kids, but he's really, really pushed through. And he's had the teachers that are like, okay, we understand that you're not that academic, so we'll put you in a certain, we'll lead you a certain way. And that's how we, as much as I'd love to be a biblical scholar, I probably haven't got the patience. But having those people around there, people like you and people like my pastors and stuff like that, I couldn't live without it. And I know people that watch this that go, all right, okay, well, I don't always agree with everything that you say, but the things that you're saying make sense. Yeah. I've had a couple of people.
I think too what you were saying as far as like, being academic or whatever, like for me, like, even though I got degrees, I'm not a person that really lead with all that or really just try and make that the highlight. I think that people, just because you got degrees don't mean that you are more educated. You just specialize in a certain area or whatever. So, I always look at it, I always try to learn from everybody. So I don't see myself as being an expert. I just got a knowledge base that I like to share with people. But I don't look at myself like, oh, you should listen to me because I got the degree. Because I really they don't have as much weight to me as what other people place. People place a lot more value on them than I do. Only reason I use it is just because certain people in certain, just because certain things I might be doing, they might want to verify what I know. That's basically all the reason why I kind of, frame it that way. But for me, I don't really care if people call me, Dr. or Ted or whatever. It's like I'm Terrence at the end of the day. But I think when you're talking about academic, I just think that you can be knowledgeable in your own way. So just because it might not have came through a traditional standpoint doesn't give it any less validity. So I think that, so like for me, every time you say that, like, no, you still you good. Like you know what you know what I'm saying? Just because it didn't come from like a more traditional right, that doesn't devalue it. And I think that's what a lot of people need to know too, because I think that's what for me now, especially, I don't know how it is in the UK, but I know especially in the United States, everybody has a degree. Everybody has a master's degree. Everybody has a doctorate degree now. So what's the determining factor? You know what I'm saying? Like, how you making it make weight for you? Because that's not necessarily going to differentiate you between other people. But just like how you were saying, people really don't, it's my stories and how I talk about stuff and how I'm relatable to people. That's what draw me to people. People don't care about, everyday people don't care about my degree. And so for you, the same people that want to listen to you, they don't care about, whatever. They just care about like, hey, he gonna be here and he gonna be honest and he gonna be transparent and he gonna really be honest and upfront about the stuff that went on in his life. And a lot of people are not willing to do that because they allow degrees or titles or roles be in the forefront. And so then they got to navigate around that and push that forward. And then they try and hide behind the other stuff. And I've just learned over time is to push all of that stuff further and further back. and I just try and present me as me, and just be me. And however that, certain times I get on, like that's one thing I do. Even before I go on here today, I pray, I'm like, Lord, whatever you want me to say, whatever. I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And so it's just like, hey, I'm just open to wherever the conversation goes, wherever I feel like I can bring value to it, and I try and do that. But not just value, but relatability and stuff that people is like, yep, that's me. Like, yep, I get that. Yeah, I've been there. And I think that's the gift of, I guess that's the gift of experience, is to share it, and I'm that type of person too. If I know something and you ask me, I don't have no problem telling you. I don't try to hold on to anything. Like, that's one thing that's my goal. Whenever the end of my life is, whenever God got that day and time, whatever, I want to be able to say, like, hey, I left empty. Whatever I had, I gave it. Whatever knowledge I had, I put it out. I left empty. I don't want to go to the grave with all this stuff. And that's what me now, that's my goal now. How do I live this next phase of my life to where whenever the end is for me, I can be satisfied, so like, I gave everything. I didn't hold nothing back from anybody.
Yep. That's kind of how I feel. I've had a few near-death experiences, and that is how kind of how I feel. Yeah. I approach this as I approach everything else, and that's God first. Because when I'm planning guests, or when I'm putting things out looking for guests, or I'm asking people to come on or whatever, I say, God, all right, you put me into this, so you're gonna please have to lead me, because I don't always do, sometimes I do things what I think is right, and it's not in your thing. So I said, if you want a certain person to be on, you will make it happen. It's like those traffic lights. You'll make it happen. It'll be a green light. Sometimes it'll be an amber light. It won't happen yet, but it's going to at the right time. And sometimes it's just a plain no, because he knows that it will lead me down a certain path, or lead them down a certain path, or that it would have no effect whatsoever on people. Even the small hand of celebrities that I've had come on here, it's been lessons. I've had stand-up comedians, it's been lessons. I've had Buddhists and Muslims, and it's been lessons, because that's what he wants, and that's what I'm doing. Like I said, it's not always easy, is it? It's not always easy to listen. And sometimes I get it wrong. And sometimes I'm sat here and I'm listening to somebody, I'm thinking, I really don't. How am I going to take this forward? Because I'm really struggling with this, and I'm trying to keep it on, and they're done within 10 minutes. And I'm like, I need to do it more than 10 minutes. I need to get it to at least half an hour. And it's been hard work. And then God's gone, well, I don't want to say I told you so, but you did that off your own back, didn't you? I think one of my biggest sayings is surrender to win. Yeah. Surrender to win. You know, I spent my life around 12-step programs, and I'm only just now getting it, because surrender isn't a bad thing. People, you know, especially men, they hear you say surrender and like, what? What? No, you stand there and you fight, you know, and it's like, no, surrender to win, because the whole thing about surrender is when you know, when you're at war, when the threat to the life of your battalion is greater than the chance of you winning in the fight against the army against you, then you have to take a step back and you have to surrender to win. You have to retreat. That doesn't mean give up. Right. That means take a step back, look at your options, because you can't always see your options in front of you when you're in that. So you have to step back, look at your options, and then you know which way you can go. And sometimes you have to retreat, and that's not a failure, that's a win. And teaching people that we need to fail, and we need to fail often, because we can't always win. Because if we just win, where does that gratitude come from? Where does that you know, that peace come from? That you know, that thing about, yeah, you know, we need to lose at times to win. You know, failure is inevitable, but you know, there's a massive difference between failure and defeat and giving up. And you know, I've only just started to understand that, and as difficult as it might be, and as difficult as things might be at the minute with things that are going on in the family and things that are going on in the world, I have to realize that everything is there for a reason, even though I might not agree with what that reason is or what God is doing. Because sometimes we need to say, okay, I don't follow God blindly. I follow him with my eyes open. I don't think any Christian that I know would say they follow God blindly. They follow God knowing that they're probably gonna at some point get a broken heart, or something's gonna happen, or they're gonna lose something, or you know, these things are inevitable. It's how we deal with them. And I think that, you know, this is why we sit here and have these conversations, because we don't always think of it. And then, you know, we're talking and I think, well, actually, you know, this is what I think. And then, you know, the guest will go, yeah, this is how I deal with it as well. Or this is, no, I don't deal with it that way. I do it this way. Because it's all about those scales and finding the right balance. And I don't think you can have balance without God. At all. Because I think you will always be fighting for that next promotion, that next hit, that next whatever, you know, going from paycheck to paycheck and thinking, well, is this all there really is? You know, sometimes I wish I was that. Non-understanding how I used to be, because this isn't the easy life. This isn't the cop out. You know, I've got to be a good boy, and not just for me and for my family, because people see me in my town, people know me in my town, but not only do people know me in my town, people now know me worldwide because I'm doing this. And then I sometimes get to go on other people's podcasts and go, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And people go, oh, well, he's talking about this, but, you know, there's a video of him punching the crap out of somebody outside Tesco's. It's not the way that I can live anymore. And to be a Christian, you have to be open and honest and willing to take the odd proverbial punch, because it's going to come and people are going to be like, why do you live like, why do you put yourself through this? Well, because I know that I put myself through that, and I don't put myself through it. God puts me through it, and God guides me through it, because I can't do it myself. People say, own up to what you did. You know, own up to the fact that you took against your addiction and you won. Well, I couldn't do it. I tried many a times over many years to stop, and I could not. And it was only when I was sat in that crack house saying, God, give me freedom or give me death, because either way, I can't do it on my own. Yeah. And I'm done. And he went, all right. It might have took me another year to accept that into my life. But how miraculous is that? He took away a lifetime addiction, and then which then enabled me to then become a more balanced person by learning about trauma response and learning about my own traumas, and then thinking, actually, because that happened, that is why I feel like this, and that is why I think like this, and because that happened, this is why I do this, and this is why this behavior is bad. And then I go to people like you and say, this is what I do. Is that like perfectly natural? Is that the thing that we're supposed to do? Is that how we're supposed to do it, or is it dangerous? And you'll go, well, yeah, do it if you want, but it could end up this way, or yeah, it's a good way. Because God puts, you could testify to this. I forgot that this was happening tonight.
Yeah.
I forgot. I thought it was Thursday.
Yeah.
And then you message, but my wife would just literally ask me if an hour before if I was doing one, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I had a backup, but I haven't heard from them. And then I'm thinking, have I got one? And then like you message me saying you're still on for tonight, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that it happens.
Yeah.
That's the way that it needs to happen. It needs to be fluid, and it needs not to be forced. I think the moment that these feel forced for me is the moment that I will have to step back and go, yeah, all right, I'm going to take a break. I've done over 50 of these, nearly over 60 actually. And I enjoy it. I really do love it. And I really do enjoy talking and listening to other people and getting that combined wisdom. And I don't know why people watch me half the time. I think it's just to watch me just babble on like I do, or get this epiphany when somebody says something like, here we pray with our doctors, and it's like, what? It's how, and that's why I don't ask my guests too much about their story before they come on, because I like to be as surprised as the next person, and I like to learn, because I don't think that you can be sincere and be open and honest and wear your heart on your sleeve if you're scripting it.
Yep.
And there's so many people that script these things, and it's like, I can't do that. Or if somebody asks me to sign something, I'm like, no. Run away. Because the moment it starts feeling businessy, that's the moment I need to go, that's not from God, is it? That's me trying to force things. How can people connect to you?
So they can connect to me. I'm always on LinkedIn. We have our progress Facebook page. Or they can reach me at our email address info@ourprogresscc.com. So basically what our progress is, it's pretty much a well-being wellness brand. So we focus on healthy relationships and life purpose. And that's how we feel like makes a whole person. If you have fulfilling relationships, healthy relationship with others and yourself, and you're connected to what you're passionate about, what your purpose is, calling, we talk a lot of spiritual, so spiritual usually calling, that's what keeps you in alignment. I
Mm,
think off track, and you talked about it earlier, you can get into different things like addictions and things of that nature when you're trying to find something to fill that void.
mm,
And not saying that your purpose will, completely fill that void, but it helps you to stay aligned because you know what you need to do, and what you're called to do and what you're led to do. And that makes the hard days a little easier to get out of bed when you know why you're getting up and what's needed of you when you get up.
mm,
Versus like, well, no, nobody care if I get up or not.
mm,
Nobody cares if I'm alive or whatever. And so that's a different feeling. And so just really creating things where people can learn, like I said, learn more about themselves, or learn how to have healthy relationships, or figure out what they want to do,
mm,
or figure out what's blocking them from doing the thing that they want to do. And so those are, it's a different language to what you usually hear in mental health circles about, are you depressed? Do you have anxiety? Are you, stressed? Are you, and not saying that those elements are not there. We just frame them in a different way. That's more relatable, and it's not clinical, trying to be academic and all of that. Trying to strip all that away and just trying to get at the core of what's really going on with people. Because, like I said before, people live in real life. That's what we try and give them or present real life back to them. And then, like I said, I guess if nothing else, this interview has been confirmation for me that I need to go ahead and do my podcast. So I've been talking about it. I've been framing and planning it for years, uh, just trying to condense it down. But I think exactly what you said, I think that's where I finally got to. I had it to where it made business sense for a long time, but I knew I've been knowing for a long time I'm supposed to tell people stories, the story that other people wouldn't hear, or let people that may not get on other platforms because they're not the traditional guests have a platform to talk. And that's, I know that's who I'm supposed to, have on the platform. So yeah, yeah, that was the main thing. I was like, okay, Lord, okay, I got you. Okay, all right, okay. Let me go and start what I need to do. But yeah, so it'll be called "I'm Not There Yet." Uh, that'll be the podcast. And like I said, I'm all about journeys and stuff. So, like path to purpose is something that I'm really passionate about. That's more purpose driven. People figuring out what they want to do. And then dream killers. That's, all of us experience things that we have inside that stop us from what we want to do.
mm,
And learning how to deal with those so we can do the thing that we really want to. So yeah, you'll be seeing more from that. I'll probably do a season just me, and then the second season will be guest. So I kind of already got that first season kind of mapped out. So it'll be more um, my own journey. So you'll see clips of me talking about myself
mm,
and my own journey. So one of them that I got is me showing a clip of when I was teaching and comparing like how I look now and how I look then, and I was stressed out. I like you could just see it on my face. I was just stressed, and but showing like this is what it could look like. You could be in something that's really, um, it looks good on the outside, but it could be literally almost killing you. Uh, and you might have to make a shift. So, so yeah, so that like, that reads me. That's all the stuff I got going on. Or and then too, I write as well. So if I got a Medium blog, so that's at Life Excavator on Medium. So actually, I probably will post something either today or tomorrow. And the title of it is gonna be Grateful. So and it's I did kind of get the visual of it. I was when I first got up here, I was staying before I got my apartment. I was staying in a hotel, and I was going to get me some lunch, and it was a tent off the side of the road. It was somebody staying there. They weren't in the tent. They might have went to get something or whatever, and it just stuck with me. It's like, man, I'm complaining about stuff that's going on with me. Somebody living in the tent right there, and that's their reality. And it's like, they could be grateful for the tent, and I'm complaining about other stuff that I got going on in my life. And so, like, all of us, can be in those situations where we're in a place where it seems like it's not good, or it doesn't seem like what we want, but it's what we got right now. And it's like appreciating what we got, whatever state we in, just appreciating that. Because if people doing way more or way less than what we got, and they've been through way more than what we've been through. And so it's like, that's that humility piece. Like, okay, I might not be in the place I want to be, but I'm not in the tent right now. But it's nothing devaluing them being in the tent. Just because they're in the tent don't mean they don't have that. Because they got a storage.
Yep. And that's why I collect stories. That's why I'm, I like to be a voice for other people, because I know what it's like to be uncounted, and I know what it's like to be that one that desires a voice, that homeless junkie that is screaming into the wind and nobody's listening. I put it into, I call it living just outside of the periphery. People know you're there, but they kind of don't see you or choose not to see you because it makes them uncomfortable. And that takes your voice away. So that's why I like to give other people voices. If you send me all your bits, website and stuff via DM, I will put it on this. As always, it will go onto YouTube and my website within a couple of days, jwgreg.wordpress.com, and then click on the Live and Undrugged tab, and you can see every episode that I've done. You can find out about me on the website as well. And with that, I think I will draw this to a close. I'm mindful of your time, but it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. Look, I was like, it's roll. I was like, okay, he keep talking, so I guess he okay. I was like, I roll as long as he rolls.
Yeah. No, my missus will be wanting to go to bed. She's not been very well, so I'm a bit mindful of that, and I'll get a coffee before I do as well. So, okay, guys. I will put all the links in the description as always. And thank you as always for tuning in. You are appreciated. I did forget to say thank you to my sponsor, Mr. James Jeffries at Gosport Bullying Facebook page, anti-bullying Facebook page. He does a lot for the confidence of a lot of people that have been through bullying. So, we appreciate you, James. And thank you for all that you do for me and for this podcast, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do Zoom and things like that. So, you are loved. Thank you for that, mate. And thank you for everybody for tuning in. All the ones that tune in every time, every week. just to hear me babble on. I appreciate you too. Thank you. And I shall see you on Thursday. Cheers, guys.